And blessed to be a part of your day with reaction to last night's State of the Union. We'll take your calls coming up at 580-KIDO, 580-5436. Cassie Smedley joining us from the RNC. Cassie, it's been a while. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Great to be with you.
Boy, that seemed more like a pep rally than a State of the Union. Your thoughts?
That's right, it did, didn't it? But, I got to tell you, the president was direct where he needed to be. He was compassionate, even humorous. But my favorite part about it, and I think the reason why there was some real pep in it, is that typically, you and I have talked before, I worked on Capitol Hill for a long time, most notably during all 8 of President Obama's State of the Union addresses. And you just hear his Santa Claus wish list every single year. It seemed like the same old items that we were still talking about that he still wanted. And this year, President Trump started out with accomplishments, things that not just since he's been president, but even since he last gave a State of the Union, things that we've made progress on, that he has made progress on. And there was a lot to applaud there. And then he said, and here's how we're going to build on that. And this is our moment for greatness, to do great things for great people. And I think there's a lot of agreement in that. How could there not be? I mean, certainly there were moments where I thought there should have been more agreement, but the Democrats couldn't help themselves. But you could tell that there was a great energy in the room because there is a lot to tout.
Indeed. Let's start with the president doing something that I haven't seen a president do recently or really ever, really defend life.
Absolutely. I think that was a much-needed moment of poignance, especially after the last couple of weeks of horrific anti-life news in New York and Virginia, most notably, and then even just on the Senate floor this week when Democrat Senator Patty Murray blocked the bill to make infanticide illegal in our country, things that used to have been, forgive the pun, but no-brainers that are now somehow controversial for Democrats to take a stand on. I was glad he took the time he did. I was saddened to see that there was minimal response from Democrats in Congress to those comments. What used to be something that we could find broad agreement on, now there's this lack of desire to even be reasonable on it. That was sad, but I'm glad that he took the time he did to say what he did and to say it as directly as he did.
Speaking of another inspirational moment, seeing two new conservative justices from the Supreme Court there, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh.
Oh, absolutely. Isn't that just the biggest promise made and promise kept for so many of us? That was the number one reason we voted for President Trump. And to see, yes, Neil Gorsuch, but Justice Kavanaugh, to think back to that horrific time, really, in our political state last fall, and to see him there, and to see him embraced by the other justices. It was a great moment. I noticed the president didn't really spend too much time noting it, but it was great that the cameras got the shots that they did.
Indeed, the president last night making the case to work together, and then you have the female congresswoman, I believe all Democrats wearing white. They seem to want to try and make a statement. The president was very conciliatory. Your thoughts on the outreach and the reaction so far?
Certainly, the president went in there saying, I'm going to have a bipartisan tone, and I'm going to give everybody a chance to stand up and applaud tonight. And boy, did he do that when he acknowledged the record number of women now in Congress. And that was a great moment, and I think generally speaking, just as obviously I'm a conservative woman, but as an American watching, you like to see when Congress can just not be political for a second. Everybody chanted USA and gave those women great moment for applause and be recognized, and that was a great moment from the president. It was unfortunate that those women, they celebrated their getting elected to Congress, and yet there were so many other common sense things that they couldn't bring themselves to celebrate, like good jobs numbers, like record unemployment, low unemployment for minorities, like of course, stopping and ending sex trafficking, and then his comments, his pro-life comments that they not only couldn't applaud for, but some of them even scoffed, and I think we have some eye rolls. That was unfortunate. You want to see more of the moments of humanity and less of the moments where they are just being political for the sake of being political.
Cassie Smedley joining us from the RNC here on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. What about the president making really history? And it's almost like we're getting used to good news from him, so we're spoiled when he's talking about possibly ending the war in Afghanistan and giving tribute to the troops that have fought there and some paying the ultimate price.
Absolutely. Again, this is the difference between President Obama and President Trump. President Obama just kept saying, I plan to do this, I want to do this, I will be doing this. And President Trump is saying, I am doing this, I have done this. And this was another example of that, where he's saying, we're going to be smart about this, but we cannot be a country that just sends our sons and daughters to war in perpetuity. We have to have a purpose. And so I think that was important for, again, a lot of us who come from middle America like you and me, who those are our siblings, those are our friends who are over there. And it's important to hear from your commander-in-chief that if they are there, it's for a purpose. And at this point, he's assessing what that purpose is. I thought it was also a great moment when he talked about North Korea announcing that there will be another summit, but that he said, and some people called it controversial, I think it's pretty factual, that if he were not president, we would be in nuclear war with North Korea. That seemed inevitable prior to his inauguration, and now look at where we are. That's a great moment of progress and something that we should all be cheering him on to be for his success. So there were a lot of strong moments where he says we can be the biggest, baddest country in the world, but we can do it in a peaceful way that makes sense for Americans.
Cassie, let's talk a little bit about the Democratic response. We had over 300 people last night at Dave & Buster's for a watch party, so we didn't get to see.
Fun.
Yeah, we've turned politics into sports, and just shows you how much we're committed to supporting the president, conservatism, and republicanism. And, chicken wings in politics, you can't beat it.
Right.
But so we didn't catch the Democratic response because we did a live talk show there. Your thoughts on if we missed anything?
Well, I would say not much because, and Stacey Abrams, she admitted she didn't watch the President's State of the Union address, and it was clear in her response. It was just, there was no parallel. It was not a response. It was just her own comments. But it showed that the Democrat Party is really devoid of a vision right now. You've just had the President of the United States talk about all that we have accomplished thus far, and his message was, and think of how much more we can do together. Let's choose greatness for our country and for our American people, because when America chooses greatness, we are an unstoppable force among the world. And then you had Stacey Abrams, who just really harped on these negative things, and she harped on her own election. She ran a leftist radical campaign in a conservative state. Yes, it was a close race, but she did not win. She still has refused to concede that. And it seemed that this was more her moment to continue to decry her loss rather than present a plan for what Democrats are going to do for Americans. So you didn't miss much. It was short. She spoke about herself a lot, and I think that's kind of sums up where the Democrat Party is right now.
The president mentioning MS-13 last night and really deflating any case that the Democrats may have about folks coming into the country that aren't criminals. How can you defend MS-13 when we had that tragedy that happened yesterday in New York?
Right. And to say that this is no longer, you can try and say that these are people that exist in countries south of us. But now here you have this issue of the shooting in broad daylight on the subway platform by MS-13 gang member. That's something that wouldn't have happened 5 or 10 years ago. That shows their reach and their expansion. And it's coming into a neighborhood near you. And so for Democrats to continue to try and, I shouldn't say a joke, but my thinking here is that it's see not, hear not, do not. They refuse to see it. They refuse to hear the facts and the stories from the people who have suffered at the unimaginable loss at the hands of these animals, as President Trump called them, referring to MS-13 gang members. And therefore, they think that is justification for them doing nothing. And that is why it's incumbent on us, the American people, to call our member of Congress and say, you don't get to sit in your bubble and pretend this isn't the reality we're facing. We have to hold our members of Congress accountable. And for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to be in her bluer than blue district in New York. That happened right next door to where she's from. And it's important that her constituents say, hey, we like you, we're happy for you, but we also need you to recognize the reality of what we're facing here and work with the president to do something about it.
Cassie, as a conservative young woman, let's go back to the folks dressed in white last night. It was, I don't know if it's sexist to me, it was some type of internal sorority where they almost didn't know how to act, and it was, should they misbehave, shouldn't they? And even they got caught up in the moment when people were cheering more women in Congress, more women on the job, USA. It was trying to, as if maybe it was a Me Too moment, they were trying to make some type of statement that didn't really seem to come off.
I agree. It was funny because I think they thought they had it up on the president, and then I love that line when the president said, "Don't sit down yet, you're going to love this," and he gave them a very genuine nod to saying, we have this record number of women in Congress, and that's great. That's a good thing for our country. But and I saw this from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, while they couldn't help themselves to celebrate that moment, which is a good thing, they also looked around and thought, oh, wait, shoot, I'm supposed to be part of this group that is essentially protesting the president. So I can't look too happy. I can't celebrate too much. I can't respond to these common sense proposals that he's putting forward, or even respond to the achievements that I know are good for our country. It was a weird needle that they were trying to thread last night, and that's to their detriment. That's too bad, because whereas President Trump gave them a very genuine shout out, and again, as just a woman, but really American, I think we like that a lot. It was this nice apolitical moment of recognizing that this is, generally speaking, good for our country, to have more women in Congress. It was too bad that they couldn't hold that through the rest of the speech and recognize those other genuine moments. But that's okay. I think that you saw that the president's true audience last night was not the people in that room. It was the American people, those who don't typically live and breathe by every late-breaking news alert. They're folks that are raising their families and going to work and living our lives. And so this is maybe one time a year that we really tune in uninterrupted to hear from our president. And he spoke swiftly, poignantly, and directly to them. And you saw the poll results for whatever that gets us. 76% of people liked what they heard and thought the president did a great job. So I think the Democrats, it would behoove them to find more to clap about, because their constituents are clearly pleased with what's happening in our country.
Cassie, final thought: when the president gave tribute to those Americans that liberated the world, fought on D-Day, and then the Holocaust survivor, and then the man that liberated many of those folks from DACA, I don't know if we've ever seen a moment like that.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know about you, but I was misty-eyed, to say the least, and my jaw was on the floor. I couldn't believe that they had connected them together. And I love, though, the president shared that incredible story, and it was great that they were there to be rightfully recognized, but how he tied it into our opportunity, again, to choose greatness, that the story is the same. The Americans are here. The Americans are here. I just love that, and that the Americans have always been a beacon of hope and a sign that the good guys are coming. And we have that opportunity over and over again to choose great opportunities to continue to be the greatest country and the greatest people the world has ever known. And yes, that happens when we talk about our military and national security, but it also happens in our everyday choices that we make, whether that is choosing life or choosing to put American workers first. And these are all of the points that the president was making in that poignant moment of those two men standing side by side, and even those veterans, how they struggled to stand, but they were so determined. There was no sitting down. They were going to enjoy their moment as they should. That really summed up what it should all be about.
Cassie Smedley, we always appreciate you, and I don't know how many years you worked on the Hill, but you don't sound like you've worked many. But we appreciate your experience.
Well, thank you for saying that. May it always be so. It was a few, but it's always great to be with you.
Take care.
Thanks.
There we have it. Coming up next, more of your calls, 580-5436, 580-KIDO, and I don't think that anybody outside of perhaps Ronald Reagan could have spoken as eloquently as our great president spoke last night.
Is ours to make.
But if other teams start to get
We must
There we have it. More coming up. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. We continue on. Let's go to the phones. Tea Party Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you?
Not bad, and you?
Thank you for a great party last night in a room filled with Idaho patriots cheering on the president. Don't find that every place. In fact, you probably won't find it any place else in this country. You know, in retrospect, this was probably one of the most momentous State of the Union speeches ever given by a president, and I say that because we have never had such a dichotomy of radical forces within our country in modern times. We have also never been more prosperous as a nation in terms of our economy, with the largest number of Americans working in history. We are less regulated by the government, and we have never had so much say internationally in the political arena because of our thriving economy and powerful military, and a president who is not afraid to speak out. And all of this is because of one man's drive and vision to make America great again. I don't care what side you are on. Last night's speech by President Trump was one of the least partisan speeches ever given by in a State of the Union. He came into his speech with a 48% approval rating by Rasmussen, and even CBS had trouble explaining a 72% positive rating for his speech. This is a man with great vision for our country. And even with all the Democrats hooting and hollering, he drives forward because it's the right thing to do. I don't remember another president in the last century who has had to fight so much opposition while having so much success in turning our country into not only one of the most prosperous, but the most powerful nation in the world. You know, I think after last night's speech, the Democrats will step up their attacks on President Trump, and they will fail in the end because there is no one in the opposition party who could beat him in the next election. If the American people didn't get it last night, they never will. But I believe we are at a turning point politically in this country because the American people are tired of division. As we move forward with this president and he continues to produce a better life for Americans, he will eventually win over the citizens of our country and a second term in office. And I believe that the days of radical socialists who would like to take over the government are soon coming to an end as they have no new ideas for their radical approaches to fixing what is wrong and haven't worked in the past and have no basis for working in the future. I do believe the Democrats have gone too far with their desire to pacify the pro-life constituents with the new laws on abortion making it legal to kill a child. This, I believe, will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I thank you very much for your time, and I'm sorry I couldn't stay around last night, but my dog was alone for 3 hours, and he doesn't really like to be alone that long, so I had to acquiesce and leave. Thank you again for a great party.
It was a wonderful time. It wouldn't be the same without you, and nice to see a lot of people coming up to you and you hanging out with a lot of your friends. Dave Petzo was there, Kent Goldthorpe, Terry from State College, Pennsylvania, Max, the whole gang was there.
You had all the great Americans there and all the patriots there last night, my friend. You are kind of the glue that holds everything together here. So keep it up.
Just trying to stay employed, but thank you, Tea Party Bob.
Take care, my friend. Have a good day.
You too. Traffic and weather together.
Channel 7's Eric Everett.
Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
When's the last time you heard a USA chant during a State of the Union speech? More importantly, the president making his stand for life.
Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life. And let us reaffirm a fundamental truth. All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God.
And again, the words of the president last night. Coming up, my take, your take on whether or not the president convinced anybody. He certainly was bipartisan. He certainly was talking about it's time for America to come together and to quit fighting Will the libs buy it? We already know what's going to happen, but we can be hopeful. We can't be like the devious little libs. There was a lot of meat there. We're going to break it down and take your phone calls next. 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
KIDO Talk Radio, your proud home for Fox News in the Treasure Valley. John Decker joining us from the White House. John, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Not bad. Just like everybody else, a late night covering the State of the Union. Initially, your thoughts and the Democratic response.
Well, I thought it was a very good State of the Union address, the president's second one. I thought it was better than his first, and the CBS polling bears that out. It seems that the president has fared pretty well in the snap polling done by CBS in the wake of the president's State of the Union address. It was like the president and his team gave us a heads up about. It would include more lines which were considered to be bipartisan and calling for unity. And there are areas in which both parties do have unity. But, of course, there are some policy issues in which the two parties are very far apart, namely on immigration. In fact, the president making it clear in his speech, Kevin, that the president will build that border wall one way or the other. And I think giving every indication that he's going to try to declare a national emergency to try to get funds for the border wall in that fashion.
Of course, we'll see what the reaction will be. This was really a speech about outreach going against the narrative. I thought it's almost like the Super Bowl where you think somebody has some tendencies and the president pulls the New England Patriots. He comes out with something totally different where he's urging folks to work together.
Well, again, we got a heads up that would be the case. The areas in which they can work together, really number two, one being infrastructure spending, but that's been tried before and it didn't go very far. I've been talking about infrastructure spending for years now, it seems. And the other is trying to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. That's an area in which the president did get bipartisan applause during the course of the speech. So, look, we'll see if there's any movement on those issues in this year. This is 1 year exactly before the Iowa caucuses, so this may be the last year in which something significant can happen in terms of moving the president's agenda forward. Next year it becomes a little bit more difficult being an election year. But look, I think that this is a good start, and we'll see what happens with that deadline approaching on February the 15th for the border security deal.
Many people believe he will declare a national emergency. We did have one of our senators, Senator Crapo, thinks that they will reach a deal, though, on the continuing resolution.
Well, that would be great. I think that no one wants to see a government, not even Republicans, want to see government shutdown again, a partial government shutdown. I think that's the reason why your senator is saying that. And, he isn't alone. There are other senior Republican leaders, including the majority leader, that say that they don't want to see a government shutdown again. That's why I think the sort of game plan for the president is to declare a national emergency, sign the continuing resolution, because that issue is now taken off the table, and see where we go from here in terms of the courts and the way they react to the declaration of a national emergency.
John Decker joining us, Fox News Radio, from the White House. That's right, from his office in the White House. How do you think the rest of the week is going to run?
Well, typically, and I don't think this is going to happen with the president, you'd see the president hit the road almost immediately following the State of the Union address, like it would be the day after, and the cabinet secretaries would hit the road the day after the State of the Union address. Not the case with the Trump White House, although the president, we're told, is going to hit the road on Monday. He's going down to Texas, going down to El Paso, where obviously border security is going to be a big issue for him as we get to that deadline approaching for that bipartisan committee to come to some sort of agreement on a border wall.
John, we appreciate you. Another hard day of work for you. Thank you for joining us this morning, sir.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
There we go. John Decker joining us from the White House. Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. This is the reaction of some folks last night to the great speech by President Trump.
So I'm just saying that if you look at what the concrete proposals he put forward,
there is not a lot of conservative. There's a lot of outreach from anti-Pelosi Democrats.
I see it very, very differently. I saw this as a psychotically incoherent speech with cookies and dog poop. He tries to put together in the same speech these warm, kind things about humanitarianism and caring about children. At the same time, he is demonizing people who are immigrants in a way that was appalling.
Demonizing child trafficking.
Hold on a second. There were people in that gallery who were children who had been torn away from their mothers at the border. He did not mention them. There were soldiers who were transgender who had been thrown out of the military. He didn't mention them. There are people there are veterans. He talked about veterans. There are veterans who he has thrown out of this country who are dreamers. He did not mention them, and he didn't say one positive thing. Listen. If you want to talk about the people he could have mentioned,
so he's not mentioning is a bad speech. He's supposed to mention everybody you want him to mention.
Listen. If you're going to talk about immigration, you're going to talk about undocumented people. Then talk about
his case.
No, hold on a second. Then talk about the one who drowned saving people in Houston after the storm. Talk about the people who have given their lives to this country. You guys see this very differently. You're looking at it from the point of view of...
And there we have it, Van Jones, once again showing that he's not ready for prime time. Cookies and dog poop. Boy, I'm sure Edwin R. Murrow and people that are talking about the benefits of being on national media. It shows you just how low the devious little libs will go. What about the person that was killed by the MS-13 gang members, sir? What about the people that are constantly victimized? What about the angel families who have lost loved ones? You know, Van Jones still thinks he works for Obama. Crazy. More reaction next. First, Pro-Life joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Yeah, when I came alive, I guess I was under Franklin Roosevelt for about 4 years, and then I've seen all the presidents, and I've been, I've noticed them. I've been politically kind of responsible since I was a little kid. And President Trump is, I think, the best president we've had in my lifetime since back to 1940. Now, he didn't tell the truth about a lot of stuff. He said we're not a socialist nation. We're not going to be a socialist nation, but we already are. And then he goes ahead and proposes that we're going to have cancer research for children, and AIDS, going to get rid of AIDS, through the government. Those are socialist medicine kind of ideas, and really, and then on the life issue, a real pro-life president would say, listen, as soon as sperm meets egg, there's a new person on Earth, and I am now going to send the federal agents, the U.S. Marshals, to all the abortion clinics. We're going to shut them down, and then we're going to take all the abortifacient chemicals out of this nation.
So you're not happy with the president when he says about life that we need to defend it. When the president says this, Pro-Life, you're not happy about this?
And let us reaffirm a fundamental truth. All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life.
Hard to argue with that one, Pro-Life.
Well, that's pretty good, but he said innocent life, that they're made in the image of God. But he doesn't want to go and define when legal personhood really begins, and the government should protect it. And that's where we need to go, because now everybody's saying, well, he's a perfect pro-life president. Well, he isn't, and he's not the perfect free enterprise president. Lots of things should be left, like the drug pricing. That should be a market decision. And he didn't say anything about alternative medicine. There's a lot of ways to get over cancer better than through drugs. But anyway, he's pretty good. I'm telling you, I just, I'm not a Republican, but if I was a Republican, I'd be jumping up and down and think he was the best. But I mean, on the ideal, he's not the. We'll never have that kind of a person because they can't get elected. But I like him. I think he's a good guy, and for sure, he's for the United States and not world government. Boy, there's none of the other people are like that. None of the other presidents we've had since I was born. They've all wanted to have United Nations, world government, and he's not for that. That's really good. So that's about all I got to say. You might have other people coming on the line, so we love you, Kevin.
We love you, pro-life.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Fascinating dynamic, Andrea. I mean, that clip you played, first of all, of George W. Bush and Madam Speaker, something that Nancy Pelosi actually often refers back to. George W. Bush used to call her number 3. And in fact, when I asked her about what it was going to be like to work with President Trump, especially as a woman, that was what she started talking about how she had a very respectful relationship with a Republican president who was a man, and wondering whether or not that was going to be very different under...
By the way, you have this young lady, Casey Hunt, about 26 years old, if that. We used to have her on the program when she worked at Politico. See how she breaks down President Trump, the lack of respect for him, the lack of respect for the office of the presidency. Clearly someone that needs more life experience. And, we look at these folks, and these are the people that are impacting America outside of what we bring you every day on KIDO Talk Radio.
President Trump. And, you've seen her become one of the very few politicians who has get the best of this president. He doesn't have a nickname for her. It's been reported that he is afraid of her in some ways, that he certainly respects her political prowess. You have seen...
Right. The president is afraid of Nancy Pelosi. And nothing against people that are young that listen to this show. I don't want to be like other hosts that bash the millennials. They are our greatest hope. We've got to bring them over to our side. But really, this woman speaks from ignorance. Had a good run, and all of a sudden she's there. She's just regurgitating and not repeating, regurgitating the devious little lib talking points.
In her, denigrate his manhood in private.
Right, denigrate his manhood. And let me apologize for advance. Casey, when have you ever been around a real man? Like Chuck Norris. When have you been around a real man? And let me apologize for that sexist comment, but when you start saying his manhood has been based on what? Casey, when have you ever had a real job? When have you ever had to worry about paying your rent instead of getting the custom-made lattes on Morning Joe? Dan in Meridian with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. Short night last night, but very excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments. The first one is a quote. This is President Trump last night, and it resonated in my heart. Great nations do not fight endless wars. And then he went on to say, our troops have fought with unmatched valor, and thanks to their bravery, we are now able to pursue a political solution to this long and bloody conflict. And not a single person wearing white stood up to clap and applaud his comments when this has traditionally been a Democratic position. They truly are the party of resistance. We have a chance right now, finally, to bring our troops home from this endless war. We have a president with a backbone that's willing to do it and spend the political capital to do it. And unfortunately, day before yesterday, both of our senators, Senator Crapo and Senator Risch, voted to extend our stay in Afghanistan indefinitely. And I think that now is the time for Idahoans to garner our support, come together, contact our senators, and tell them it's time to stop being the world's policeman, support President Trump's foreign policy, and let's bring our troops home.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. You're right.
And your comment about Chuck Norris, he would be an infinitely better Speaker of the House. I agree with you.
Thank you, Dan. Take care.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Resolute Raj, fresh off his Dave and Buster's appearance last night. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Hey, really appreciate you putting the shindig on last night. My wife and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It exemplifies why we came to Idaho. Loved it.
It was a great event last night. Your thoughts on the president's speech?
Phenomenal. He hit it out of the park. I love the way he stood up for the unborn. I agree with pro-life. He didn't go far enough, but at least he stood up as much as he did for him. I love that he spoke against socialism. Unfortunately, most people in our country, I don't believe, realize where socialism leads, which is tyranny and oppression. We've seen that all through history. I wish the millennials would look at history and study up on that. But the one glaring thing that struck me when I saw Debbie Wasserman Schultz was we don't get our republic back until we see her and others like her in orange jumpsuits. We have not seen justice done in that regard, and that really needs to happen in order for us to have confidence in the republic again, in my opinion.
Roger, you take care, and thank you again. Great to talk to you last night, brother.
Great to meet you, Kevin. Have a great day. Appreciate all you do.
God bless, sir.
You too.
Bye-bye. Norm in Meridian with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Morning, Kevin. Last night's speech was something that I was just really happy about. I actually like to go one step further about what Dan was saying in regards to the Democratic reaction to President Trump saying that, he doesn't want to fight an endless war. Bernie Sanders, a presidential nominee, didn't even clap to that. And that was something that he was running on. And I was like, how do you not do that, you hypocrite? Just blew me away. But, going back to what he was talking about in regards to immigration, Kamala Harris, the TV panned over to Kamala Harris when he started talking about, the illegal immigrants coming into our western border or southwestern border, California and everything like that. I'd love to make sure that all of her, personal property protection is torn down, and let's see how long she actually stands on that platform that I don't want to build a wall. Because it's keeping her safe right now. I think we remove it, and I think we stick around it just long enough to see her change her mind. I don't understand how that's happening here and how they are not, and I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, just from a human stance, how do you not vote for that? How do you not want that to happen so you could protect your constituents? That's just what kills me. I don't get the mentality coming from that side of the political arena. Why does it have to be a Democrat or Republican thing? Why can't it be a human thing?
Right. And we've all had to do this as men and women, give a tip sometimes to the opposition when they do the right thing.
Exactly. And that's the biggest point. It's you may not agree with everything that's coming from the opposite political view, but let's take the political view out of politics and let's look at it from a human standpoint. Why can't we applaud an opportunity to protect Americans that are your constituents, whether you're Republican or Democrat? I don't think it really matters, the political viewpoint. I think what really matters is the people that are being protected. And if we're not doing that, then why are we electing anybody? Regardless of whether they're sitting in the Senate, the House, we need to really focus on what's personal and what means most to us. And when I see a bunch of Democrats silent when it comes to protecting Americans, it doesn't speak well to the Democratic Party. Oh, and here's the other thing. When President Trump was mentioning the shutdown, that we really need to come to a consensus that I think the Democrats are going to do themselves a big disservice, because the last time we had a shutdown, President Trump ended it, and the first thing that happened is we started getting checks out to the people that were government workers that needed them. if it gets shut down again, I think the Democrats are going to be looked at in a light that says, well, you know, this is how it stands. You know, he did right for us last time. They don't give a crap about us, and they are going to lose big time. And
Sure.
Honestly, I got to tell you, there was a personal sense of pride there looking at Bernie Sanders' face when President Trump said, we're not going to turn this nation into a socialist.
Norm,
the look on Bernie Sanders' face, you know, it was like, oh shit, I just lost the election.
Right. They all look constipated. We can't swear on the air. Thank you. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.